Hi, my name is J.J. Frost. I'm a landscape ecologist at ABR based in Fairbanks, Alaska. My Arctic journey began in 1995. That's when I first came to Alaska, and I very quickly became quite passionate about not just Alaska, but its setting in northern ecosystems. ABR is a small environmental consultancy, been around since 1976, and we work all over Alaska, and being able to work in these places is a real privilege. And it's also very intellectually stimulating. These are areas that are changing very rapidly in response to climate change, human activity, and so on. And so there's a lot of very pressing questions that relate to these things. They go from circumpolar level, so really thinking about tundra biome and the boreal forest biome in a global sense, and using satellite information to address questions like how are these environments responding to rapid decline in sea ice and increases in temperature, permafrost thaw, and so on. In order to do that well, we drill down to the scale of even just field plots where we might monitor a location over time and be able to look at specific locations in their response and ultimately connect them like connecting dots that inform our understanding of the bigger picture at a global scale. The specific circumstances in different parts of the landscape really matter. And some of the places we see the most rapid changes, shrubs are often utilizing these very small pattern ground features that are related to permafrost environments. Pattern ground, very visually striking, but you have to be up close to see it because the individual features are only maybe just half a meter wide, and they're not the things that you can see in remote sensing or satellite data. So the eureka moment has to do with standing out on the landscape and simply seeing the relationship between shrubs and these small features that when you're standing there looking at them are very obvious, but you cannot see them from space. The effective use of remote sensing data often requires a lot of informed interpretation of what you're seeing in the data, whether it's optical imagery or some other form of remote sensing data, and that's really where on-the-ground experience is really vital. Permafrost is a fundamental component of these systems. They affect everything. They have just a very broad effect on ecosystems, but it's a subsurface property. Frozen ground, you can't see it as you're walking, even if you're standing on it. And so this is where integrating remote sensing data, which allows you to look over large areas, more than you can just walk over, you have to have this on the ground knowledge and some ground truth, if you will, in order to make sense of what you're seeing in remote sensing and really use it effectively. We all have in science our own particular areas of expertise. I look through the lens as an ecologist. I collaborate with atmospheric scientists and climatologists at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and they look through a very different lens. And so being able to bounce ideas off one another and synthesize information that requires different perspectives, that's really critical. I live in Fairbanks. I know about a lot of different regions of Alaska from a number of years working there. And so I can have some ideas of how ongoing environmental changes might be impacting other parts of the Arctic. But different regions, they all have a particular landscape history and different circumstances in those environments, and being able to collaborate with people who have on-the-ground experiences in other parts of the Arctic, that's what really allows us to make our work much more robust when we're addressing global scale questions. Fairly early in my time in Alaska, I was able to work as a seasonal employee in a National Park Service project to inventory breeding birds in Yukon Charlie Rivers National Preserve in interior Alaska. I was dropped off by a helicopter in a remote area, interior Alaska, and set loose to record data on birds. Birds are linked to very specific different habitats in Alaska that are subject to rapid changes. And so there's a close link between my efforts professionally to understand changes in vegetation and landscape conditions, and also understanding the status and trends of different bird species in Alaska and how they're exploiting opportunities. In tundra environments, we see certain species coming further north, and yet we also see species associated with tundra environments that are often finding habitat conditions are changing and not necessarily for the better. And these are also highly migratory species, and so they're kind of stitching together really vast areas of geography within Alaska and globally. Birds in general are very useful indicators for other aspects of the environment. One area in which I think we in the scientific community have a lot of room for improvement, and that is recognizing and involving and respecting the body of knowledge that exists out there that Arctic residents, indigenous residents, can provide in their long perspective of northern ecosystems and how they're changing. Elders have a reference frame that goes back even before we had things like satellites and could understand what's happening in remote areas. And they also are excellent at synthesizing different pieces of what is a very complex puzzle, and the way that specific events can impact environments and how these impact things that people really care about and what it all means for Arctic people.